For the first time since Geoff Hurst in 1966, a World Cup host nation scored a hat-trick. The man who did it was Canada's Jonathan David. And on the very same night, Canada broke a silence 40 years deep, the longest in their World Cup history, by winning a World Cup match for the first time ever. 6-0. By the final whistle, two of the biggest names in this group had each put 4 points on the board, and a tournament that began wide open had narrowed to a straight fight. But here's the strange part. The loudest moment in Group B that night, the one people kept coming back to, wasn't a goal at all. The final score read Canada 6, Qatar 0. Silly Larin opened it in the 16th minute. Jonathan David added 3 of his own. Nathan Saliba struck from a free kick, and an own goal completed the half dozen. We'll let the highlights carry the goals. Here, one line is enough. Online, the conversation barely touched the scoreline itself. It pulled toward 2 things instead. The first was the host nation story. 52,497 fans packed BC Place in Vancouver, and Prime Minister Mark Carney was among them, after missing the opener in Toronto. For anyone who remembered what Canada's World Cup record actually looked like, that crowd noise meant something. This is a team that was shut out 3 times at the 1986 World Cup. A team that managed only a couple of goals across the entire 2022 tournament, and lost every game. In 90 chaotic minutes, Canada roughly tripled their all-time World Cup goal tally. So when fans called this the best night in the history of the program, it wasn't hype. For a lot of them, it was simply true. The second thread was Jonathan David. A striker who, by most accounts, hadn't scored in the run of play in over a year. Suddenly, on the biggest stage the sport has, with a hat-trick. And the moment the Geoff Hurst comparison surfaced, the whole thing tipped from great night into history. Some fans leaned hard into that framing. Others simply enjoyed watching a player many had written off answer his critics in the loudest way available. But a colder red ran underneath the celebration, and it's worth being honest about it. Qatar were soon down to 9 men. A 6-goal margin against 9 players is not the same as a 6-goal margin against 11, and plenty of neutral observers said exactly that. How far should we trust this scoreline? Hold on to that question. It follows this video all the way to the end. For Canada supporters, this was a night they did not want to end. But on one side of that same pitch, while the home crowd roared, a completely different emotion was taking hold. Early in the second half, Ismael Kone was carried off on a stretcher after a challenge by Asim Madibo. The Associated Press reported the injury as a broken left leg. And this is where the night split in 2. One half of the conversation turned to anger at the challenge, at how physical Qatar's game had become. The other half went quiet and turned to Kone himself, filling timelines with messages wishing the midfielder a recovery. It's a familiar collision online, the urge to assign blame, running straight into the urge to simply wish a young player well. Both were loud, and they were loud at the same time. By the time Kone went down, Canada were already a man up. Homan Ahmed had been sent off in the first half, and even that call had a twist. The referee initially pointed to the penalty spot. Then the video review changed everything, no penalty, a free kick just outside the box instead, and Ahmed's yellow upgraded to a straight red. With Madibo's dismissal added on, Qatar finished the match with 9 men on the field. And because it was a co-host on the right side of those calls, the discourse turned messy fast. Some fans framed the officiating as the real story of the match, the argument being that a contest becomes almost impossible to judge once one side is playing a man, and then 2 men, short. Others pushed back just as hard, pointing out that reckless challenges earn red cards regardless of the score, and that Canada were already in control well before either dismissal. Neither side really moved the other. On nights like this, they rarely do. The decisions divided opinion the way these things always do. One camp called them clear and correct, dangerous challenges, properly punished. Another camp argued the VAR involvement was heavy-handed, that the game was being officiated into a rout. This video doesn't pick a winner in that argument, because honestly, the replays support a reasonable case on both sides. What isn't in dispute is the sequence of events. Qatar came apart to 2 red cards, and Canada poured 6 goals into the space that opened up. After the match, Silly Larin spoke about his injured teammate, saying, in effect, that they got the job done with Kone in mind. It's the line that captures the whole night, a celebration and a casualty, side by side. That was Group B's first story. The second was unfolding 700 kilometers to the south at the exact same time. Down in Los Angeles, in Inglewood, sat the other Group B heavyweight. Switzerland 4, Bosnia and Herzegovina 1. But if Canada's win was a fireworks display, this one was the complete opposite, right up until it wasn't. For 70-odd minutes, this was the game nobody wanted to talk about. Tight, cagey, low on chances, the sort of match that has fans online half joking that it might be the dullest 90 minutes of the entire tournament. Switzerland were the favourites, Bosnia were the team riding momentum, and for a long stretch neither could find a way through. Then one substitution rewrote the whole evening. A 20-year-old named Johan Manzambi, a Geneva native who plays his club football for Freiburg in Germany, came off the bench. And inside 3 minutes, he met a dropping ball on the volley and rifled it home. The mood flipped instantly. And then it got wild. Bosnia had a man sent off, a last-ditch, last-man challenge that drew a straight red, the first sending off anywhere in this tournament since the opening match. After that, the floodgates. 5 goals arrived in the final 20 minutes, and here's the detail that lit up the timelines: every single one of those 5 goals, on both teams, was scored by a substitute. What made it land for neutrals was the shape of the thing. There's something almost comic about a match crawling toward a goalless stalemate, and then detonating the instant the substitutes arrive. Some fans joked that the real game only kicked off in the 74th minute. Others zeroed in on the coaching call, that throwing Manzambi and Vargas into a stuck game, and watching them combine for the breakthrough within minutes, was the single most decisive thing anyone in a Switzerland shirt did all night. The numbers turned Manzambi into a piece of history. At 20 years and 247 days, he became the youngest player in World Cup history to score twice in a single game as a substitute, and the first player ever to do it for Switzerland. The match itself joined a tiny club too, only the second game in World Cup history with as many as 4 goals scored by substitutes. And the team on the wrong end of all this, Bosnia, in just their second World Cup ever, arrived unbeaten in 9 matches. That run ended here, in 20 frantic minutes in Los Angeles. So that was the night. Canada won with fireworks. Switzerland won with patience and a bench that refused to lose. 2 completely different routes, and the exact same destination, 4 points each, at the top of the group. Which means the 2 of them are now on a collision course. So here's where Group B stands after match day 2. Canada and Switzerland, level on 4 points apiece. Canada sit top on goal difference, +6, thanks to that demolition, with Switzerland just behind on +3. Then a steep drop, Bosnia on -3, Qatar on -6. What that table really tells you is this. The 2 heavyweights are now standing on the edge of the round of 32, in command of their own fate. Bosnia and Qatar, meanwhile, are suddenly staring at must-win finales just to keep their tournaments alive. But, and this matters, don't write the chasers off completely. This is a 48-team World Cup, with a brand new round of 32, which means the 8 best third-place teams across all 12 groups also go through. A third-place finish can still be enough. So Bosnia, even after that painful night in LA, are not mathematically finished. Qatar's road is far harder, but the format keeps a sliver of the door open longer than it used to. There's history riding on this one, too. Switzerland have rarely lacked for solidity. 3 of their deepest World Cup runs ended in the quarter-finals, stretching all the way back to the 1930s and 50s. Canada, by contrast, have spent almost their entire World Cup existence as the side making up the numbers, never once reaching the knockout rounds. So a head-to-head with first place on the line, between a co-host chasing its first-ever knockout appearance and a team that treats this stage as routine, carries a weight the group opener never had. Still, all of it narrows down to one fixture. June 24th, BC Place, Vancouver, Canada vs Switzerland, winner takes the group. Noon local in Vancouver, 3 p.m. Eastern. The same building where Canada just lived out the best night in their footballing history. The same crowd, you'd imagine, ready to roar again. And here is where the question this video opened with comes back to find us. Is Canada's 6-0 the real thing, proof that this co-host belongs among the contenders? Or is it a mirage, built largely by a Qatar side that spent half the match down to 9 men? Because against Switzerland, none of those advantages are guaranteed. No 2 red cards to play with, no certainty that the home edge tilts the night their way. Switzerland are a top 20 side with a settled spine, and they'll arrive knowing exactly what's at stake. And Switzerland have a question of their own to sit with. How do you read a win that your starters couldn't deliver, a win handed to you by the players on your bench? Is that frightening depth the sign of a squad built to go deep, or is it a warning that the first 11 left it far too late? One thing, though, is beyond argument. In a single night, 10 goals, 3 red cards, and 1 stretcher, Group B went from the quietest corner of this World Cup to one of the most compelling. 2 co-favourites, level on points, meeting head-to-head with first place on the line. The questions are stacked up and waiting, and the answers arrive on the 24th.